Welcome to the Options Save Lives weekly live stream, where we spend an hour each week exploring life-improving topics through a lens of alcohol recovery and the Sinclair Method. Every week, we take on a new question, topic, or common challenge to empower people to either build a better relationship with alcohol or to eliminate it completely. Episodes are filmed live on Twitch at twitch.tv/C3 Foundation, and the audience is encouraged to ask questions and engage with the host and guests. The Options Save Lives weekly stream is hosted by Executive Director Jenny Williamson and is produced by the C3 Foundation with the support of R Street Institute and other generous sponsors. For more information about the C3 Foundation or the Sinclair Method, visit our website at c3foundation.org. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the Options Save Lives weekly live stream. As always, I am Jenny Williamson, Executive Director here at the C3 Foundation, and your host for the next hour. How is everybody today? We are back to broadcasting live from the C3 Foundation office here in Fort Myers, Florida, where we have all of our equipment and stable Wi-Fi. So where's everybody else watching from? If you're a first-timer to the stream, drop in and say hi. This week, we're going to talk about the second and third parts of the Sinclair Method support process with Bruce Rose from Alcohol Recovery Scotland. We had to ask Bruce back today because earlier this season, we just couldn't stuff all of his insight and knowledge into a 1-hour program. So while he'll give us the briefest of overviews into the first part of the support process, we're going to let anyone who missed our earlier episode watch that one separately, and I'll put it underneath in the resources section for this video when I post it later today. If you have any questions while we're talking, and if you have any suggestions that have helped you personally, please put those in the chat box so we can keep things interactive. Before we jump in, let me properly introduce our guest for today in case there's anyone out there who doesn't know Bruce. So Bruce has a number of years' experience working with individuals in drug and alcohol dependency through his roles working for a homeless charity night shelter and as both a deputy manager and manager of drug and alcohol residential rehabilitation centers. His background and training was originally abstinence-based models. Bruce began researching other models of recovery and found Claudia Christian's TEDx talk on YouTube. He initially switched it off with the comment, "What a load of rubbish." Following further research, he came to realize that the Sinclair Method worked, just as Claudia had said. Bruce now works with clients exclusively with TSM and has a passion to share his experience and learned knowledge on TSM to date. His goal is to see TSM readily available to anyone in Scotland. On a personal note, Bruce's passion to work in addiction comes from 6 years lived experience of addiction in his early 20s and the loss of his own father to alcohol addiction. So everybody give Bruce a warm welcome. Bruce, say hi to our audience is chatting hello to you in the stream chat.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. The fascinating thing with this is it is all over the world. So wherever anyone is, whether it's Australia or States or Europe or, yeah, welcome. Thank you for having me. Can I just also say as well, I put up a post on a social media thing recently along the lines of that people who pioneer things in life don't tend to get enough recognition for what they've done. And the work that you guys have done with C3 is amazing. Nothing would be happening here in the UK if it wasn't for the work that you guys have done. So thank you very much for what you've done.
Well, thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. So usually we start off with an icebreaker before we dive in, but instead, how's your unicycling going? Tell everybody about why you are unicycling.
A good question. Why am I doing it? I don't know. I ask my question that's every time I get up on my one little wheel and come off again. No, I decided a year ago that Sinclair Method TSM is nowhere near where it needs to be in this country. Again, the success rates that we have with it. I'm really, really conscious in this country that we need to get a lot more awareness. So yes, I want to raise funds and stuff to keep the process going. But I saw a video about a year ago of a young guy that unicycled around the world, and I was looking for something absolutely crazy to do to just to raise awareness and get some media coverage and all that kind of stuff. And I saw the video with the YouTube guy. I thought that looks easy. Forgot he was 18, fit as a fiddle, probably been doing it since he was 12. So at 54, I decided, yep, I'll get myself a unicycle. And 3 months later, I still couldn't ride it, but I can ride it now. I just need to get the training. And in September, I'm going to be doing a 500-mile trip around the north of Scotland, purely to raise awareness for the Sinclair Method. We have to get awareness so that more and more people can use the Sinclair Method. And that's sounded crazy enough, and it's getting a lot of attention. Unfortunately, when I'm doing well, it's good. It will be good in the end, though.
Well, that is amazing. That 500 miles is that's a little bit more than impressive.
And the roads in Scotland are not flat. That's the other thing. So they're very, very up and down. And yeah, I've changed it from I am doing the 500 mile to I am going to attempt the 500 mile, just in case.
I can understand that.
But yeah.
So last time you were on the show, we talked extensively about the first part of the support process. So real briefly, for those people out there who may have missed that episode, what should people know about the first phase, assuming, and give them enough nuggets to make them want to go back and listen to that one and catch the full discussion?
Yeah. It's with what I do here in the UK, everyone has a slightly different model of working the Sinclair Method. What we do here in Scotland and the UK, we work with clients in England and Wales as well. I take clients right from the very first port of call where they phone me, right the way through to what we would classify as pharmacological extinction, right to the end process. So I'm seeing clients from the very, very beginning, right the way through the whole process. And I've been doing it now for 3 years. And there are very, very common patterns that come through that whole process. The first one, I ask clients to do 3 things: the 100% compliancy with naltrexone an hour before you take your pill, before you have your first drink. I ask them to send me a weekly drink diary, which is an Excel spreadsheet that was made up by yourself. Thank you very much. And stay in touch with me at least once a week, once a fortnight, as we go through the process. So from that drink diary, the almost, I would say 95% of clients I work with, there is a very, very common pattern that when I always ask them to give me their pre-TSM, it was actually on your spreadsheet, the pre-TSM total in units. I measure it in units, alcohol units. And then as the weeks go through, they'll give us a daily total, and it adds it up automatically on the weekly ones. So almost every single drink diary I see coming through, we will see a 30 to 50% reduction in someone's alcohol intake in the first week to 2 weeks. And that's purely a result of an individual starting on naltrexone sitting on the receptor and doing what it does from a neurological process. So we will always see that initial drop. Then what happens is it levels out. And when I say levels out, it will go up and down a little bit. They'll have a good week and a bad week. And so it'll go up and down a little bit, but it'll never go back up that 30. Well, it has done once, but there were reasons for that. It then goes into the second stage, which is I would classify as the manual reduction program. So that's where we really have to get into the habitual processes, the emotional situations, the circumstances, learning to adjust to life without the volume of alcohol that people have been used to.
Okay, so thank you for giving that first overview. So again, anybody who's watching this, if you missed the detailed discussion, I will have that link underneath this video on our website later today. And then that way you can watch both of these. And Bruce, I'm just going to let you jump right in on that second part of the process.
Okay, the second part, like I said, we normally see a 30 to 50% drop initially. So, for example, if someone's drinking 100 units a week before they start, which is equivalent, just for anyone in the States, in the UK, that'd be the equivalent to 10 bottles of wine a week. So what we would normally see is we would see a 30 to 50% reduction, which will bring it down to between 50 and 70 units a week, somewhere in that gap. Your first week, you'll get an initial drop. It sometimes goes up a little bit and then levels out. Sometimes it comes down and then just levels off at that stage. From that stage forward, the whole process is all about taking the medication 100%, keeping a daily track of what you're drinking and staying in touch. So what is happening in that process is something I learned very early on in the days of the Sinclair Method, is that AUD, alcohol dependency, is created with two main areas not in mind, but as part of the process. The one side is the physical addiction or dependency on a substance. In this case, it's alcohol. But what the alcohol is doing is creating a flow of endorphins in the brain. So someone's brain and the body will become dependent physically on that endorphin reward. So there's a physical side to the whole process. The other side is what we call habitual processes, the habitual side. But that habitual side also includes emotional responses to things, psychological responses to things, how people are going to cope as they reduce, as they come down. So what we do in the program is we're always constantly checking people and making sure that as they're reducing, that psychologically and emotionally that they're safe. And then in some situations, we will signpost to therapy or counseling or psychiatrist or whatever the situation is. Some people they don't need it. But when you see that reduction after the first 2 weeks, you then go into what I would classify as the stage 2 process. So that whole process is all about week by week by week by week, taking your pill 100%, recording the volume on the diary, and making very little changes each week, and managing that reduction as people go through that process. So some people will have a good week, they'll have a bad week, they'll have a good week. So there are so many different areas. This is where what I tend to do is I will tailor make the program for the individual. So some people find it easier to do one thing to another thing to something else. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what is best for the person, and then we can work our way through that one. So just a very, very simple, when I'm looking at the diary, what I'm looking for are, yes, I'm looking at the total, but I'm also looking at patterns. So I'm looking for patterns of, is it 10 units a day every day, or is it all over the place? Is it 10, 20, 15, 12? Is it all over the place? And then what I'm doing just with the client is I'm speaking to them and I'm saying, okay, on a day-to-day basis, what is your pattern for drinking? Do you drink first thing in the morning? Do you drink at lunchtime? Do you always have a drink when you come home from work? What is your daily routine? Now, most of the time, there's quite a common pattern that goes through that. So what we'll then do is we'll have a good look at that whole process, and then we will start making very, very small changes within that person's pattern and daily structure. So for example, if someone's working, they finish work at 5 o'clock, they'll go to the supermarket, they'll buy a bottle of wine, they'll come home. As soon as they get through the door, they open the bottle of wine, they pour a glass of wine, they start cooking a meal and have a glass of wine with the meal. They'll have a glass of wine with the meal. That's right. They'll start having, did I say that right? They'll have a glass of wine when they're cooking the meal. They'll have a glass of wine when they're eating the meal, and then when they're finished, they finish the bottle off. So that's an average pattern. So what I'd then be doing is say, okay, when you come through the door at night, don't have that glass of wine when you cook the meal. Have your first glass of wine with the meal. So basically, or a simple way of putting it is, instead of having your first drink at 6 o'clock, move it forward to 7 o'clock. And just do that. That's all I want you to do for the next week. We've seen the 30 to 50% drop. For this week, all I want you to do is to push back the 1 hour, 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And then when I'm speaking to them the next week, I'm then reassessing how they have managed or coped with that 1 hour change. Now, sometimes they'll come back and say, yeah, absolutely no problem. The medication's doing its thing. It's working. I'm not getting any craving or huge cravings. So then we can look at another day, another change, and another change, and another change. The biggest thing that I notice with people who are on TSM is that they'll see that initial drop, it levels out, and then what happens is they start to realize, hang on, this is working. It levels out, and then people then say to us, they say, well, it starts to level out, and week 3 or week 4 are very common for me to get a phone call and go, oh, Bruce, it's not working anymore. It's not working anymore. Should I go up to 75 milligrams? Should I go up to 100 milligrams? Should I do this? Should I do that? And it's like, right, stop. Whoa. I said, very, very normal. That's exactly what happens. And at that point, then people don't have to. It's at that point we then need to start getting into what I call the trenches, and start making the habitual changes. And then as we go through that process, what will then happen is, I had it yesterday, two clients yesterday, they phoned me up. They sent me the drink diary, just for example, say it was 10 units, 10 units, 10 units, and then it goes up to 20 units, and then back to 10 units, 10 units. And they phone me up and they go, oh no, I've blown it. I've done everything. Oh, I've had an extra drink. And at that point, I stop them and I say, right, okay, only question I've got is, did you take your pill? And everyone says, yep, I took my pill. I said, right, no problem at all. And I get all the different responses, like, you're crazy, Bruce, you're stupid. Like, what do you mean? I've had a few extra drinks. But what I've said to them, listen, as long as you've taken the pill, what is happening? It's sitting on the receptor. It's reducing the amount of endorphins in the brain. It's rewiring the neurological pathways as you do it. So whether you have 10 units or 20 units, it really doesn't matter. Now, I don't advise you to go and do 20 units, but if you have one day where it goes up and down because of the habit or circumstance, when it goes up a little bit, people will say, well, what happened? What happened? Oh, I was doing so well. And I said, well, what happened on Wednesday? And 9 times out of 10, they've had an argument. They've had a bad day at work. They've had a good day at work. They've had some good news. They've decided to get married. They've decided to do something, and the drink has gone up. And the one thing I have learned from the cure for alcoholism was that Dr. Sinclair found after 90 to 100 days, the majority of the craving had been dealt with. So when I'm working with a client who's passed 90 to 100 days, then I'm saying to them, okay, what has driven that increase in drinking at that point has nothing to do with craving and addiction, but has everything to do with habit and circumstance. So so therefore, don't worry about it. It's not going to spiral out of control, which is the people's panic. It's like, oh no, it's going back to where it was. Don't panic. That's a habitual. It's your response to a situation that happened last Wednesday or last Tuesday or something else. So what I'll always see in the diary is you'll see it will go up to 20 units. And I said at that stage, I don't care what it goes up to. What I'm interested in is the day after and the day after, because you'll find very quickly it will go to 20 units and then it'll go straight back down to 10 units, no problem. And then it will just carry on from that stage. So it's all about working a program. That's what we do. We work a very, very specific program in habitual change, I suppose it is, and managing it. Sorry.
So other than the panic, what are some of the common struggles and stumbling blocks that you see most often during this particular stage?
Too big a change too quickly is the most common one. So a lot of people come on to, I've been on the program a year, I've been on the program 2 years, and it's just plateaued out, and I'm not getting anywhere with it. So I go straight back. I said, did you see an initial drop? Yep. Okay. We know the medication's working. So then I'll go into asking, so, okay, when you go in and dive into the daily patterns, what they're doing is they're making too big a change too quickly. So there's a lot of talk on social media and stuff about alcohol-free days and everything else. So, which is absolutely fantastic, and we need to work towards that. But sometimes in the early days, people will see something on a social media site, which for one person is the best advice they can get. But for someone else might have done 3 alcohol-free days. Someone else has been on the program for a month. They haven't had an alcohol-free day yet, so they go for 3 alcohol-free days. Like, oh, I'll go for 3 alcohol-free days. Now they can do it that 1 week, but again, in connection with all the neurological pathways have to readjust and change and rebuild at whatever level they're at. So if they go from where they're at to 3 alcohol-free days, now some people might be able to do it absolutely no problem. Some people, I always say to clients that if you make any change and you cannot sustain it 5 weeks out of 7, you've made too big a change too quickly. So that means you just need to pull back a little bit. And this is why I say to people, okay, you've changed too much. You need to go back to, let's go back to 1 alcohol-free day a week. Let's work towards 1 alcohol-free day a week. Once you get that under your belt, the neurological pathways will build up and will become very, very comfortable and emotionally very, very easy to do 1 alcohol-free day a week. Fantastic. Let's cement that. I call it cementing in that 1 alcohol-free day. Let's do that for 1 or 2 weeks. And then after that, let's move on to 2nd alcohol-free day. And then it builds up, that process builds up the confidence in the individual that the medication is working. And it also builds up their confidence in themselves, so that each little victory they get, they go, oh, wow, I can do this. I can do this. And then they take another step. Oh, I can do this. And they look at the diary, and I'll get people phoning up saying, it's not getting it. I heard Claudia actually was talking about this on it might have been 2 weeks ago, literally on your, I was watching it last night. And people are coming on and saying, well, nothing's happened. I'm not getting anywhere. And I laughed when I heard Claudia talk about it on your thing. I had a lady the other day said, I'm not getting anywhere, Bruce. And we pulled up a diary and I said, you've had a 70% drop. And I said, it's happened very slowly over a period of time. And that worked out the equivalent of a bottle of wine a day with this lady. And I said, so that works out at 30 bottles of wine a month that you have reduced. And I said, over the period of time, now you take that on another 6 months or 12 months. I said, you have no idea what you've achieved here. And I said, but it's happened quite slowly, which means when you go back to the diary, so many people get down to, it's not going fast enough, I need it to go faster. And people say, how long is the process going to take? And I said, well, we can't give that time because the whole process to me is, when I used to work in the rehab centers and the abstinence-based programs, the whole process, whether it's rehabilitation or peer support meetings, they are all made up and structured to fight the craving. So everything in the rehab center, the whole process, you're not allowed out, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, because the craving is building, and we need to protect you and keep you safe. That's why you have all the peer support groups, because people are fighting the craving. You need to, come on, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. So they never get past the dealing with the craving side. Now, with the Sinclair method, the beauty of it is all you have to do to deal with the craving and the addiction is swallow a pill. Now, that doesn't do the whole thing, but that deals with the craving and addiction, and it allows us to get through into the habitual side. Now, just swallow your pill. That will deal with the craving, so you don't have the craving issue. Now we can spend time, we can do it in a very, very comfortable, relaxed, safe, and what was the expression that Claudia always uses? Humane, a humane way of reducing someone down at a speed that is comfortable for them. And that's all to do with the habit side.
Now, you just talked about 2 things that some people may find conflicting. You've said that on one of the most common struggles is that people reduce too fast or too much too fast, and that the other common struggle is that people reduce slowly and gradually and therefore don't notice the change. So spend a moment talking about how these aren't actually in conflict with one another, that there's no specific sweet spot that overcompasses everyone. So talk about a little bit about that.
I actually had a lady, we were just talking about, not her, but a lady had asked for some coaching through your C3 that I spoke to this morning. And she said that she's been on 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 months. And she'd seen the initial reduction, and then it had leveled out. And I said to her, what we need to do is make sure that you are reducing a little bit each week. So, but don't focus on the reduction side, focus on the habitual side. So if you are reducing too much too quickly, then it's not sustainable and you can't keep it going. But if you're reducing slowly, then the neurological pathways are rewiring, and you're relearning that whole process of learning to deal with different situations with different volumes of alcohol and less and less and less. So as people are going through that this is where I think your tool, the diary, has been absolutely priceless for what we've done. So thank you. Because I always go back to the diary every week with clients, and I sort of say, okay, well, listen, we've dropped this much. Okay, last week you've gone up a little bit. So it's so that they can see the successes that they're having, so that they can see, yes, I am actually getting somewhere with this. Because I think because it's quite a slow, gradual thing happening, and it happens that when I say slow and gradual, it happens at different speeds for different people. But the reason it's so important to log your daily drink is, yes, it keeps a total and everything else, but it's not to point a finger at you and say, oh, look how much you've done. It's a case of, okay, when we look back 6 months, we can say, oh, hang on a minute, I was up here when I started. Now I've had bad weeks and good weeks, and it's gone up and down a little bit on the graph that you have on your Excel spreadsheet, which is fantastic. I've never had a graph that is just a nice smooth down. You'll see the initial drop, and then it goes bang, 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 up and down and up and down. But the average curve it's dropping and dropping and dropping. So I think the diary is really important, so that people know that they're reducing. And when we put them on a very specific program, then or structured program, they know that they are getting somewhere. And in amongst all that, it's not just a figures thing that I'm doing with them, but I'm also sleep will get better. People's sleep will get better. People's anxiety levels will get better. Their relationships in the family will get better. Again, Claudia was talking about this yesterday. The family will then be encouraging. I see such a change in you. I see there's so much difference in you, and you're not going to the pub every or the bar every Saturday night now, or whatever. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But when we peel it all back and just stick to take your pill, keep a diary, and we can then monitor the change, so that it motivates an individual to keep going. And if you have a bad week, there's no such thing as a bad week on the Sinclair Method. So as long as, and people say to me, oh, I blew it. And I said, well, did you take your pill? I said, yeah, okay. As long as the drinking level is not at a dangerous level for their health, or for children in the house, or for other people in the area or in their vicinity, as long as the drinking levels are safe, if you have an extra few drinks one day, it really doesn't matter. If you took your pill, then fantastic. Let's just get back in the saddle and try again tomorrow.
And during this second stage, other than following the protocol and tracking the drinks, what is the number one most important thing that a person should keep in mind during this habit change portion of the support process?
The most important thing I would say is to log it, because I think that the drink diaries are so underrated. Not underrated, but it's not just underutilized. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a case of keeping a track of your figures, so you can look at the end of I had 10 drinks or 20 drinks or 30 drinks, but they show you patterns. They show you how you've got on over the last 3 to 4 to 5 months. They'll show you this, and it shows you a whole bunch of stuff, but it motivates people towards to see where they're going and what they're doing. But the biggest thing that I notice with people is that they is just keeping a track of the changes that they're making, and actually setting goals to reduce the things. So if someone is going from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, the biggest danger, especially with someone who has been struggling with their AUD or alcohol dependency for years, the minute they know that this is starting to work, all of a sudden they want rid of it as quickly as possible, understandably. So they try and do everything at once. So this is, I keep saying to people, I said, this week, we're going to go from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. I don't want you to do anything else, nothing else. And it's trying to keep people once from running ahead of themselves, because if they run ahead of themselves, now this is where the support comes into it, because you're assessing each person as they go along. Now, if you can't sustain a change, it only means one of two things. It means that someone's not taking the medication, or that change they've made is too big, so they can't sustain it, so they need to come back. So we need to know, it needs to be a very clear, this is what I'm going to do this week, so that at the end of the week, you can then look back and say, how did I cope with that? And then, did I cope with it? Didn't I cope with it? Did I not cope with it? Okay, I've done well with that one. Okay, now let's make another very specific change. So it's a very clear, structured. The challenge with anyone caught in dependency of anything, drink or drugs, is that life starts to become more chaotic, and people will drink as and when in different situations. That they'll drink. There's not really a lot of structure to the process. So the hardest part with an individual, I say to people, for the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, just structure your life and your reduction program, and you will never have to worry about alcohol ever again. So it's just getting that specific program to reduce it, I think.
So that is just wonderful advice, Bruce. Let's go ahead and move into talking about the last and the third stage of the support process.
Never, ever, 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 ever have a drink again without the pill. That's the crux of it. However, there are a lot of, it does create another issue. I mean, the one thing that clients that work with me, it's a standard joke that everyone just, I get to know my clients quite well, and I hopefully have a good friendly relationship with them. But we always have this explanation that if you ever forget to take your pill, if you live within 2 hours of me, I will drive to your house and I will ram it down your throat. Now, I don't do that. But taking the pill is there's 100% failure rate with the Sinclair method if you stop taking the medication. It's very, very high success rate if you do take it. Very, very high success rate. So stage 3 is all about what I would call maintenance. So as people are reducing and reducing and reducing, they will get down to a level that we would call pharmacological extinction. And in that time, over the months, all the habitual change that they've made has become habitual. So they've created new habits and new everything else. So when they come home now, they don't have a drink, and they'll start saying, well, I drink, I have 1 glass of wine, and then I just can't be bothered. I just don't really fancy another glass of wine. So they've come down all the reduction, and the new habits are all in place. But the most important thing with the Sinclair method is, as somebody is reducing, because they're taking the medication, the medication is dealing with the physical, the craving side of things. So as people are reducing, the craving is not kicking back in at the back of it. So there's no craving kicking in at the back of it. Craving is the #1 cause for relapse. So if you can keep that craving at bay with the medication, then what happens is that the reduction is sustainable. And the only reason it's not is because of emotional situations coming down. So as someone comes down, you get right the way down to the lower levels, whether it's very low level drinking or abstinence. At that point, it's then a case of maintaining that level. You know it as well, Jenny, is not difficult on the Sinclair method. With abstinent based programs, it is, because the craving is still there. There's a daily fight to keep it at bay. With the Sinclair method, once you get down to that level, Claudia talks about it, the peace that people have at that level, there's just no anxiety, there's no monkey on the back saying, don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. It's complete, no craving, no white knuckling it, and no hassles. So at that level, we've then just got to say, listen, whatever happens, if you don't drink for a week or 2 weeks or 6 months or a year, whenever you have a drink, you have to always remember, take the pill. You're not through the worst thing. You still have to take your pill. The reason for that is the minute you don't take the pill, I normally go into it. I've done a bit of study on the amount of endorphin. They can measure the amount of endorphins released as a result of any activity. So when someone drinks alcohol, it releases 1,000 to 1,200 nanograms of endorphin. So when you take naltrexone, it reduces it right the way down. So the minute you don't take naltrexone and have a drink, it goes straight back up to 1,000 to 1,200 nanograms. And at that point, it completely floods the brain and the individual will lose complete control of logical decision making as to how much they drink. So the minute you stop taking the pill, whether it's 6 months or 12 months without a drink, your brain will go from where it's at straight back up to 1,200, and the relapse will happen just as quick as it would on an abstinent-based program. So at that stage 3 is all about whatever you do, take your pill. And one other thing at that stage is sometimes with what we would classify as chronic drinkers, people who are heavier drinkers, this is what I'm talking about, the reduction stage. If someone is coming from quite a high level of drinking and they reduce too much too quickly, and it's really difficult to manage that one. But as you're dropping down, if someone has been a high level drinker, they've dropped right the way down to next to nothing. They might absolutely no problem a week, after 2, after 3, after 4, after 5 weeks, absolutely no problem. The hardest part of the Sinclair method is learning to adjust to life without alcohol. Nothing to do, the craving and everything is not an issue within the Sinclair method. So as people get down to that level, especially the heavier drinkers, the minute they hit a life situation, and it's going to happen at some stage, the loss of a loved one, a divorce, or just something really not fun. At that level, you might not have experienced that level of emotional intensity without that volume of drink. So what I'm saying to people is whatever happens to you in the future, no matter how bad you're feeling, whatever you do, to always take your pill. It's okay on a day-to-day when life's going great, but when you hit a really hard part, whatever you do, take your pill. And when you take your pill, I've had people who've got down to extinction, they've lost loved ones, and they've said to me, I don't know what to do, Bruce, I don't know what to do. And I've said, take your pill and drink whatever you feel you need to drink for the next 2 to 3 days to get you through. I had a lady who lost 2 family members in the space of a week before Christmas. She had reached extinction. She was having 1 or 2 glasses of wine a week. And she said, I just feel like going out and getting hammered tonight, Bruce. And I said, right. I said, please, please, please trust me on this one. And she said, yeah. And I said, take your pill and then just drink whatever you feel is right to drink tonight. So she took a pill and she phoned me 3 days later and she said, thank you very much, Bruce. And I said, what do you mean? She said she took a pill. She was planning on having 2 or 3 bottles of wine that night to get to sleep. It was just it was a horrible time. So she said, I had 2.5 glasses of wine. And then I just decided that was enough. The next day, she had 1 glass of wine. And she said the next day, she was back to nothing again. And she said, the first time in my life, I was able to go through the grieving. It wasn't easy, not easy at all. But she was able to go through the grieving process naturally without, she said, if that hadn't been for the Sinclair method, I would have been, or if I was on an abstinent-based program, I would have had a drink. And that would have been me for 6 months. I would have been long gone. So that's why I'm just saying to people, whenever it's kind of preparation for, you're still going to hit obstacles. It doesn't take away life's issues and all that kind of stuff. But whatever happens in the future, always, 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 always take your pill.
So we've got a 2-part question in the chat here. And it says, for someone who is a binge drinker, should they try to reduce the number of drinks per binge or the number of binges per month or both? And if they're binging for 12 or more hours and they're not redosing, how is that compared to drinking without the pill?
Sorry, that last bit, drinking without the
without
pill.
the pill. So
Yeah.
binge drinking for 12 or more hours without any kind of redose.
Yeah.
How does that compare to just drinking without the pill?
Binge drinking is fascinates me. Not fascinates me, that's the wrong word. Um, Binge drinking is normally comes about as a result of abstinence. Most people who are into binge drinking, I spoke to a guy this morning actually, drinks 2 weeks, solid for 2 weeks, and then nothing for 2 weeks. And the more I asked him, and the more I've learned, is that people say to me, "Oh, I'm going to do dry January," and they say, "Yeah, isn't it fantastic?" And I said, "It's the worst thing you can do in your life." I said, "Go away and give your money to charity." And I said, "And don't touch it with a barge pole." And they always look at me and they go, "But why?" And I said, "Because what happens with, again, we don't have time to go into it tonight, but Dr. Sinclair found something called the deprivation effect. So when someone goes on the dry January, they stop drinking in January if they have a level of dependency. Now, if they're just doing it, if they're a social drinker, then absolutely fantastic. But if you have any level of dependency, you stop drinking on the 1st of January, the craving will build and build and build and build and build. Come the end of January, the brain and the body is going, I need my alcohol. And people at the end of the month, they go, whoa, and bang, 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 bang. And then they suddenly drink too much for 2 or 3 days and think, oh, I've done it for 4 weeks in January. I'll do it for another 3 weeks in February. So they do it again. And at the end of that build up of the craving, they go bang, 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 bang. And next thing you know, you've got someone that's on and off and on and off and on and off. Or it could be a work situation. They're away for 2 weeks and back 2 weeks. But if I get someone on a binge, who's a binge drinker, my first goal is to get them on the medication, to do a full assessment to work out, okay, what everyone's pattern for binge drinking is different. So like you said, that there's someone will have 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or they'll have 3 or 4 days on and then they'll have a week off or whatever. Everyone's different. That the binge is different. So the first thing I need to work out or speak to the client about is, what is your pattern for binging? Now, the binges are normally very, very patternized. That's not the word, but they're always the same. There's 2 weeks here, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, or 3 weeks on, 1 week off, whatever it is.
Yeah,
so
in fact,
what I'll do
I think
first,
Claudia mentioned when she first started, she was going 3 to 6 months even between
6
binges.
months.
And so so it really is very highly individualized.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've known people in the rehab world that they would go 6, 7, 8 months without a drink. But then there's a time clock in the brain that would then, once you get to whatever your period of time is, something just clicks and bang, off they go. So whether it's 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, 12, even 12 months, you get it. But then, so what I'm doing is I'll get people on the medication, I'll get them on the program, and then first of all, I just need to get them taking the medication whilst they're having the binge and seeing what sort of response they're having to that medication. So we're just seeing, is there a 30% drop? Is it reducing the amount that they're drinking on the binge? And we get through 2 or 3 binges, or 1 or 2 binges again, as long as it's safe for them initially. Then what I will actually do is, once we get a level of control with the naltrexone alongside the binge, let's say it's a 2 week on and 2 week off, I would get them on the naltrexone for the 2 weeks they're drinking. I'll see what the drop is and see what the level is. We'll see how much control that individual has as a result of being on the naltrexone. And then once that's happened once or twice, what I would then do is I would introduce naltrexone alongside a very controlled intake of alcohol in between the 2 weeks. Because what I want to do is I want to break up the 2 week. I want to break up the pathways, or the habitual process of 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. The Sinclair method is all about regaining control again. So what we need to do is we need to take away that 2 weeks build up. And so we say, once we've got things under a level of control on the binge, we would then need to introduce very carefully and in a very, very structured way, small amounts of alcohol in those 2 weeks that they don't normally drink, to then level everything out, take away that build up of the craving, and then once we've leveled it out, we bring the whole lot down as one. The redosing If someone, for the way we work, I work with a doctor here in Scotland, who's an addiction specialist, and the way we work it is if someone is drinking for more than about 10 hours, we would suggest a redose. So if someone's binging 24 hours, absolutely, I would, alongside the doctor's advice, I'm not medically trained, so I'd always go to the doctor. We've got a client here who's drinking 24/7. Is it okay for us to give them? We'd basically give them a pill in the morning every 12 hours, or 12 hours would do it. The only time I would try and stay away from double dosing is that when I was talking about the physical side and the habitual side before, sometimes people will double dose and not make any habitual changes. So just be careful that that's not happening. So if you are going to double dose, it would only normally happen for us when we're working with clients who are drinking over a 10-hour period, more than a 10-hour period. But I'm also, when I'm working with a client, I'm making sure that, yes, they are making habitual changes, because we don't want someone just taking another pill and then that just allows them time. You can just drink more without making any habitual changes.
That's great advice, and we usually tell people the same thing. If you're, because it'll come up in the peer support groups, somebody will say, "Well, I've been on for, 3 months. I've stalled out. Should I double my dose?" And it's like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing to work as a partner with the medication? And if somebody is doing everything right, there may be a situation where they need a higher dose or they need to redose, but it's not the first step somebody should go to, because, as you said, if you're not working as a partner with the medication, then just doubling the medication is not going to do much other than cost you twice as much in medication costs.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and it's always, and I get it very often in week 3 or week 4. People come on and say, "Well, I need to increase my dosage. I need to increase my dosage." In 3 years, we have increased a client twice, I think, and I think because we're really focused on the habitual change side of things. So the 2 clients, we didn't see any change, didn't see any change at all. So then after 6 months, I went back to the doctor and I said, "Listen, we're not seeing anything happening." She's tried moving it from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And I thought, I've met the first client that it doesn't work for. So I went back to the doctor and I said, "Can we increase the dose?" We went to 75, nothing happened. We went to 100, nothing happened. Long story short, about 3 months after that, her marriage situation, she was a very private lady and didn't tell me much. Her marriage situation she actually left the marital house, unfortunately. But there was a lot of stuff going on where it was the right decision for her to make. But what we then realized, she said to me, it wasn't the fact that I wasn't taking enough medication. She said, I just could not cope with my marriage situation reducing at the same time. So that took us back to, it was all to do with, when I say habit, I mean habit, emotion, psychological, and circumstances. So that lady's circumstances were too emotionally charged for her to reduce and deal with life without that volume of alcohol, because it was an immediate situation that she was living on a day-to-day basis. So it wasn't to do with the volume of the medication, but it was to do with the circumstances. So we need to just settle the circumstances. And then she's been alcohol-free now for 6 months.
Oh,
she just went bang.
That is awesome. So we are getting low on time, but if you were to look at the 3 stages and rate them in terms of the level of effort needed in each stage, how would you rate those stages in terms of effort?
Stage 1, open your mouth and swallow a pill. And allow the pill to do what it naturally does from a neurological process in the brain, and you will see an automatic, in most people, an automatic 30 to 50% reduction just by swallowing a pill.
Well, but how much does effort play into waiting the entire hour or so?
Or the hour.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I mean, we know that we know talking, and people who understand the Sinclair method already understand that it's take a pill, wait the required 1 to 2 hours, and then drink. And usually that effort, any effort needed, generally comes in either remembering the pill to begin with or waiting the hour before you take that first drink. So with that in mind, how does the effort level compare in stage 1 to the other 2 stages?
I find in stage 1, unless people are, if they're average moderate drinkers, I haven't found it be too much of a problem. Chronic drinkers, maybe a little bit more. And then what we would then do is it doesn't happen with myself very often, but if it does, we would then put things in place so that, say someone's finishing work and they're coming home and then having the pill when they get home, and then they're struggling to wait the hour, then I'd say to them, okay, well, take your pill with you to work. And when you'd call it a washroom in America, wouldn't you? Or when you go to the bathroom in this country, then take an hour before you leave work, take your pill, and so that it's taken by the time you get home. It's not really something I come across too often. This is quite a hard one to say. The times I do notice it happening is normally from people who are half-hearted about the process. What I do find is that when someone has struggled with AUD for a number of years, they have battled and battled and battled. The guilt, the shame, the why me, why can't I stop, all that kind of thing. That once I do a lot of explanation with our clients as to this is how the process works, this is what's going on. Whatever you do, and I keep emphasizing, whatever you do, take your pill, wait an hour. I think once they understand how the process works and they know that there's a very, very high chance that it's going to work. With most people, they can go. I say to them, go for a walk, go for a swim, go for a bath, go for a shower, go and do something for that hour. And it normally pretty quickly gets under control. It's if someone's a chronic drinker that it gets a bit harder.
So then most of the effort is in the second stage?
Yeah. I'd say it's, apart from that 1 hour that people get used to fairly quickly, it's all into the second stage. And it's not so much, I still find that the second stage process, as long as you do it at a pace that is suitable and comfortable for an individual, that reduction side is even very comfortable and very easy. No, I used to say easy, but it's very comfortable. And that's why that if you make too big a step and you start getting very anxious and very sort of, oh no, I can't cope, or you start white knuckling it, or you start getting stressed about things, that it doesn't mean that the process isn't working or whatever. It just means that you've made too big a step too quickly. So just pull it back and do it that way. But the habitual change in the Sinclair method is the hard part, if you can call it that hard part. And the secret is then to break down all those stages and do that slowly. But yeah, the second stage is the hardest. The third stage, once you've reached extinction, most people don't want to drink anyway. It takes away, yourself. It takes away that desire and obsession to drink. And most people will have a drink and they go, oh, I've had one drink, I don't want a second one. So the third stage, again, the hard part of stage 3 is whatever happens. I don't care what happens in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, still take a pill when you have a drink. But stage 2 is where you will see the make or break in the Sinclair method with people, I think.
Thank you so much, Bruce. It's hard to believe, but it looks like we are almost out of time already. Audience, you guys have been wonderful as always. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. What advice are you guys taking from today? Go ahead, put the nuggets that you're taking away in the chat for us, and let us know what you thought. And please join me in thanking our wonderful guest, Bruce Rose. Go ahead and fill the chat with love for Bruce. Bruce, any last words for our audience before we wrap up?
The one thing I always start with clients, and the one thing that I always hammer home to them all the way through, alcohol use disorder, alcohol dependency, alcoholism, whatever word is being used for it, I say to every single client I work with, it is not your fault. That so many programs out there, because they don't have the understanding of the neurological side, when people relapse because of craving, the only option is to turn around and say, well, you chose to have that drink. You didn't follow this properly. You didn't follow that properly. And therefore, it's your fault. And the number of people that come to me with guilt and shame and because why can't I stop this? My wife doesn't do this. My husband doesn't do it. Why can't I just stop? And when I explain, I have so many people. It's not. I have so many people coming on the phone to me, and the first thing I say to them, it is not your fault. And the number of times people burst into tears, and it's a neurological condition in the brain that is treatable with medication alongside that one-to-one support to go through that reduction. But it is not. I will stand up in front of any medical person, any politician, anybody, and I will explain to them exactly why it is not an individual's fault. I do say to people, it is an individual's responsibility how they act and behave under the influence of alcohol. That people need to take responsibility for that. But the process, the neurological process that's happening, that's created the AUD or the addiction, is not an individual's fault.
Well, thank you. And we've got some great comments. Our audience always loves having you on the show, Bruce. They find such value in the information that you're sharing. So the comment section is just filling up with gratitude for you today. So, audience, if you guys came in late, or if you want to share or watch the stream again, we will have today's video up on our website, YouTube, Vimeo, Anchor, and Spotify by the end of today. And as soon as we're able to, we'll get the transcripts and closed captioning added as well. Next week, we're going to be joined by Claire Casier from the Your Sinclair Method Coaching, and we are going to talk a bit about the importance of adding play and fun into recovery, because recovery is hard enough. Addiction is hard enough, so why make recovery hard too? So start thinking about those questions now. If you found value in the broadcast, we hope you'll hit the donate button in our profile or head over to our website and make a donation at c3foundation.org/donate. You can follow our channel to get broadcast alerts and subscribe to our channel to go ad-free and get some bonus emoji to use. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can subscribe for free. If you'd like to suggest a guest or topic for a future broadcast, we've got a link to a Google form that drops in the chat, and it's also found on our main schedule page on our website. We've only got a couple openings left this season, but we will have our next season starting up in the fall, and we're already starting to line up guests for that as well. So definitely send along your suggestions. If you're on the Sinclair Method and you're looking for more peer support, or if you just want to join the C3 Foundation community, we have you covered with groups on Facebook, Discord, and the Options Save Lives forum. You can also find Bruce on the Your Sinclair Method coaching site as well. And that is it for today. So have a great weekend, everybody. Be gentle with yourself and with others. And I will see you again right here next week on Twitch at noon Eastern Time. Bye, everybody. You've been watching the Options Save Lives weekly live stream, hosted by Executive Director Jenny Williamson and produced by the C3 Foundation with the support of R Street Institute and other generous supporters. For more information about the C3 Foundation or the Sinclair Method, visit our website at c3foundation.org. If you have a question you want answered live on air, to make guest suggestions, or to support the show, let us know. You can reach us through our website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or on Discord. Join us each week as we continue to discuss more ways to help you build a better relationship with alcohol, or to eliminate it completely. Because recovery from alcohol use disorder is not a one-size-fits-all process. Options are available, and options save lives.